excited to see everyone here. We have a few folks in the room and we have a good crowd online. We will be using here in this space an owl, which it's a camera and microphone that moves between speakers in the room. Sometimes it gives us a great online experience. Sometimes it might, be pointed. You might have questions about why it's showing the people that it is, but it should work for us for this session. So this session is entitled Introduction to COIL. My name is Rachel Fest, and I am the COIL coordinator at SUNY Oneonta. I'm also a specialist in pedagogy here, and I'm going to be welcoming two colleagues, Wijdan Tawfiq and Sarah Wyman, to talk a little bit about their projects today. I'm going to jump over to the agenda. So our agenda starts with just getting started with COIL. I'm going to share a framework, share a timeline. This is information that can help you if you haven't yet planned and implemented a COIL project, but you're curious about doing so. We'll just give you that brief info, but I really want to spend most of our time today talking with Wijdan and Sarah, both of whom are experienced COIL practitioners. We're very lucky to have them here today. And when we do jump over to their two projects, which they will have time to go into in depth today, I'll let them tell you a little bit more about themselves. So after I talk a little and after we hear from our presenters, we will have time for conversation. I'll be monitoring the chat online and we can chat here in the room. I have a few questions prepared about benefits, challenges, tips for getting going with COIL, but we're open to see where the conversation takes us. Okay, so I wanted to briefly just start with this schematic. This is a COIL project framework that we've been sharing with our faculty who are thinking about getting started with COIL here at SUNY Oneonta. And this is a great framework just for thinking about COIL in general. So you have the semester of your COIL project here. And this is indicating that you're only thinking initially about maybe a 4 to 6 week period of collaborating with your class and another class that you might connect with abroad, right? So we see COIL projects of all different shapes and sizes. Some might just be a unit of a couple weeks. Others might be multiple steps throughout an entire semester. If you're just starting out with COIL, we recommend, thinking about a unit-long module, something in that 4 to 6 week range, maybe with scaffolded assignments that can help students build to something they're doing together. The other thing we really like to emphasize as you're getting started with COIL, oftentimes faculty will jump into this, especially at the university level, thinking, I need to find a COIL partner who is working in my discipline, right? If you're English, you need somebody, or if you're literature, you need somebody working in literature. If you're chemistry, you need somebody working in chemistry. But we see successful collaborations across a range of disciplines. And one of our sessions later today is actually going to be focusing on that interdisciplinary question. We'll be hearing from folks who have matched across, business and psychology, or Black studies and general studies. We have a lot of different pairings. So the connection you make, your discipline is A, you can find a discipline X in a partner, right? It doesn't just have to be in your field. Similarly here, you see that we definitely have folks connecting across languages with COIL collaborations. Your class is speaking language B, the other class is speaking language Y. This absolutely can include challenges, right? It's something to think about and something to plan for. And we'll definitely hear from our presenters on that element of language as we keep moving. But this is to say, different languages, different disciplines, these don't preclude collaboration. They can make for very rich connections. So what I have here is the COIL implementation timeline we like to share. And I'm just going to move this for the folks in the room here. So this timeline lets you think about that whole scope of planning your COIL project, right? It starts a year before you actually want to do that in your class. Now, this is not a hard and fast rule, right? You could I have definitely seen people say one semester, I'm going to do this in the spring, it's now the fall, and that can happen. But, you know, if you have that time to give yourself the lead on developing, that's going to let you get the trainings you need. It's going to let you work with your partner. It's going to let you do a lot of the planning that can really set you up for success. So a year before, maybe you take the COIL course orientation, right? Here at SUNY Oneonta, and I know many folks at institutions here in the room and online belong to the SUNY COIL Center, which offers a tremendous amount of support programming for faculty, for COIL coordinators and administrators that can support people in getting these collaborations going. So you have that option early on. If you're thinking about dipping your toe in, you might think, let me try to get connected with the SUNY COIL Center through my institution or another way, and maybe I can take those courses to get me thinking about this. Some of these are listed up here: the COIL Foundations course, COIL Elements workshops, COIL Design workshops with your international partner. That's for a little bit later on. But these are all great offerings that SUNY COIL provides. The second step we have, semester before your COIL project, moving into this area. This is when you want to find a partner for your project. And on the next slide, I do have, or I think 2 slides, I have a little bit more information about that partnering piece, so we can bracket that for now. But you have, you know, you're ready to go. You've thought about this. You've thought about what you might want to do. Now you're ready to find that partner and say, all right, we're going forward. And that gives you time as well in that semester beforehand to plan your COIL project with your partner, right? What are my outcomes? What are your outcomes? What do we want to do? What's the time difference? What's the technology situation? Language, right? You start to ask all those questions and work through them. And this is where something like the COIL Design workshop with your international partner is going to, you know, help support you there. And then finally, we have the semester of your COIL project. You're implementing that project in your 2 classes. You're seeing how it goes. You have that excitement of international connection. And then hopefully you start the cycle again after your first try. So this is a slide that Hope Windle, our SUNY COIL Center Director, shared with me. And she likes to make sure people are thinking about a broad range of types of COIL collaborations, right? I've kind of been talking about it as in the context that we see the most here, which is university faculty working with other university faculty. I know we have at least one person in the room who works in the secondary ed setting, so there are many other options here as well. So some of those options Hope has listed here. You could connect pre-college EOP programs with COIL. You could connect first-year programs with COIL, and we are seeing at certain institutions, at the institutional level, some people are starting to require those embedded COIL projects. COIL within your 15-week course, that's what we've been talking about. You could have COIL with pre and post in a travel experience. So if your students are studying abroad, there are ways that you can prepare them for that by connecting them with people ahead of their travel, and then maybe debrief and maintain those connections that they need in person after, if you're doing a faculty-led experience or study abroad, for instance. We have COIL connections to research, COIL projects connected to clients or NGO, and we have COIL projects focused on the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So these are all great ways in. And so the last slide from me is a little bit more about the partnering process. So when faculty are wanting to start out with COIL, usually the first question is, who am I going to work with? Who's going to be my partner? How am I going to connect with somebody, right? And we've seen so many great partnerships develop in a few different ways. This first one on your own, this is a popular one. Say you have an international contact, you met somebody from research, from teaching, you might be from abroad, right? And you might be teaching in a different place and have connections at universities elsewhere internationally. You could just work with somebody that you already know, that you've connected with, you know you get along. oftentimes we find that in these partnerships, just having that connection, that personal connection, it's a great way to get started. So number one, on your own. Second, if that does not describe you and you don't have anyone in mind and you're like, I really want to do this and connect with people, chances are on your local campus, there are resources in place that might help you find your way to an international connection. Oftentimes, global education offices will have connections with faculty at other institutions globally. You might have a COIL coordinator or COIL leadership on your campus. And they might have a list of people. They might be able to point you to other institutions. You have a lot of options there. You can also think about going to your experiential learning offices, your grants offices, just kind of trying to get a feel on your campus for what support might be there. And if I would say the third option here, which oftentimes works in conjunction with those local campus connections, we have partnering fairs, the bulletin, networking opportunities, all through the SUNY COIL Center. So again, many institutions and some faculty don't know it, subscribe to the SUNY COIL Center and already have access to their training programs. And even if that is not the case, it's easy to get connected with the SUNY COIL Center. They operate globally and they make connections with folks all over. So the partnering fairs they offer, I've attended those as a COIL coordinator looking to make connections for my faculty here. There are so many exciting people enthusiastic about finding somebody to partner with for COIL. And they provide a bulletin with those names as well. So you have lots of great ways to get started. I'm going to go ahead and check the chat before we jump into Wijdan. Good morning, everyone. We have one comment online saying, you went through a 6-week class with TC3 in preparation for a COIL project. You were paired with somebody and then he disappeared. Yeah, that can be really difficult. You're hoping this may give us another chance. Yeah, that can be really challenging when you have put some time into a collaboration and then it doesn't end up moving ahead as you like. So hopefully some of the ideas that we're sharing can, point you in the right direction. Okay, so let me jump over here. I'm going to turn things over now to Wijdan. Wijdan, give me 1 second to make sure you appear for us in the room. All right, there you are. And I also want to move this so we can see your slides. Okay, go ahead, Wijdan, and let's welcome her to share about her project.
Hello, everyone. Rachel, is my voice clear? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you all for being here today. First, I would like to thank Rachel and SUNY COIL for organizing this event and for inviting me to share excited project. I was actually part of 2 COIL projects, and I will share one of them with you today. It's an honor to be part of such a dynamic event. The project I'll be presenting today brought together like apparel design and merchandising student from Saudi Arabia and United States, and we create and deliver virtual exchange program. And I would like to first acknowledge my fellow collaborator, Dr. Cosette Martinez from Texas State University. She is the leader of this project. Alina Karpova and Rish from University of North Carolina. And myself, Wijdan Tawfiq. I am an assistant professor and the chair of the Department of Fashion and Textile at King Abdulaziz University in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. And lastly, Asil bin Hajib from University of Jeddah. Together, we have worked to design a virtual exchange program that offers fashion design students a unique opportunity to engage with their peer across border, enhancing their educational experience through cross-cultural collaboration. Uh, uh, how can I move to the next slide, Rachel? Should I just tell you?
Yes,
Okay.
I'm going to do it for you, Wijdan, but I was just having an issue. I'm sorry about that.
No, it's okay. Thank you for doing that. So here's an outline of the core purpose of our COIL project, which was designed with several key objectives in mind. Our main or overarching primary purpose was to take traditional fashion education beyond its usual scope to integrate a cross-culture experience. We wanted students from Saudi Arabia and United States to engage with one another, learn about each other culture, and explore how fashion differ and overlap across border. We did this through like a virtual exchange program. We enable students to work with their peer and instructor from different cultural backgrounds. And that's like, we try to foster an environment where they can learn and about like their learning like experience, not from like one or single institution or single nation. This experience was not only helpful for students, as we also as instructor learned from this. Of course, like curriculum development was a key learning for us as an instructor. We work closely to jointly develop a cohesive curriculum that guided students through this virtual exchange, including module, assignment, assessment criteria, etc. Another purpose of our COIL project was to contribute to academic research. Of course, as a faculty in the university, we wanted to document our approach to design and deliver this virtual exchange program. And we wanted to provide resources that can benefit future educator and student in the fashion field or even in another fashion. We wanted them to offer them an insight into a global collaboration in education. And we aim to understand the experience of both student and instructor and during developing or implementing a COIL project. And can we move to the next slide, please? Here's an overview of the program design for our COIL project. We have 5 instructors from 4 different universities, 2 in Saudi Arabia and 2 in the United States. And the program was implemented in across 2 semesters, giving us enough time to dive deeply into the topic and allow for meaningful collaboration between the students. I want to mention here, like not all the students were registered for all the courses. So we have some students who took the like was part of COIL in the first semester but not in the second semester, but we do have students who got like the chance to do it twice in 2 semesters. In total, we engaged 436 students, which is a significant number of learners who were able to participate in this enhancing cross-cultural experience. The courses or the course content focus on three different areas. We like in Jeddah University, the course was in fashion design, and in the 2 American university was in social psychological aspect of clothing, and in KAU or King Abdulaziz University, which is the course I taught, was in fashion retailing and marketing. And one of the key achievements of this project was the collective development of 2 overarching learning outcomes. That was both challenging and achievement to actually bring like or try to build a COIL, a meaningful COIL, as Rachel was mentioning in the beginning of that. So like you don't have to have like the same field. But I found it very challenging as an instructor because we are in the same field, but we did face a challenging just trying to find like what like an outline or like a learning outcome that align all our courses or match all our courses. So those are the 2 main learning objectives for our COIL, which is aligned with all the courses area or courses context. And yeah, that's we don't have to go through. Like one of them was the cross-cultural understanding of sustainable fashion consumption, and the other one was freedom in dress, individuality versus conformity, culture, and how culture and society influence dress choice. And this two outcome was a very good fit for all the three area that our course is focused on. I'm ready for the next slide. This is a picture from our Padlet. We did explore another platform, but we found Padlet as like a very good platform to use, especially with our university using different platforms. So we use Padlet as an instructional platform to foster student connection, and we found it very helpful. We did use Zoom and another like Google Meet and another like technology for real-time communication, but Padlet was where we put all our assignments and where the students submit their assignment and discussion. I'm ready for the next slide. Okay, and this slide outlines a key activity that we did during our exchange was from 6 to 8 weeks. And of course, the time, or like, because some university will have 15 weeks the semester and other will have less or more. So we try to have the 16 to 8 exchange was a very good like a time for the COIL project. We first start with the ice-breaking activity for the student to connect and get to know each other and build the rapport. And we then ask students to have 2 in-depth discussion to explore specific topic related to cross-culture understanding of sustainable fashion consumption, and like how choosing dress differ from in different culture. So the first activity was about sustainable fashion consumption, and the second discussion was about freedom in dress, individuality versus conformity. And in the final project, we asked students to use their discussion during those 2 discussions as a qualitative data. They use it as a qualitative data to write and create a global persona, and that was their final project. This global persona supposed to highlight them as a consumer and how they think about sustainable consumption in fashion. And we also, throughout this exchange, virtual exchange, we conducted pre and post survey to gather feedback and assess the program effectiveness. This survey was from both student perspective and instructor perspective. And yes, I'm ready for the next slide. You're right. So for students, the survey focused in the intercultural components, but in the instructional part, we did have a survey that have all open-ended question, 15 open-ended question. We focused in this survey on the challenge we face, we highlighted opportunity, and we reflect on the process and experience and how can we make it better in the future and improve it. The main result is in the next slide. For us as instructor, we find it a very, like, of course, there was a lot of challenging. The main challenge we face as an instructor was in like communication, time differences, some language barrier, and of course, between students, we had to translate some of the main like guideline or like rubric, some of other like learning outcome. We had to translate it for students, and that was very time consuming. And to actually find the alignment between the courses was a very challenging task for us, and to develop a joint curriculum that match all our courses also was main challenging. However, we did find it as a very rewarding experience for us as an educator, and we believe that it's helped us grow and learn. We learn how to not only how to manage like a COIL culture, but we also learn many like teaching methods and pedagogical approach. And we also, like as an instructor, find that we value the same thing and explore cultural differences related to dress. and dive in, or like how to develop a global perspective, business and cultural interaction. The main lesson, I will conclude with this, or main lesson, a core lesson, we learned that to be part or participate in a COIL, it does require a long time, significant amount of time and effort to communicate, to like navigate differences, to ensure the program goes smoothly. It is a lot of time and effort. And we also learned that there is some cultural sensitivity that we need to navigate it through our exchange. And this is my conclusion. I was happy to be part of this, and I can say in the end, it's worth the effort for the student and for instructor. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Wijdan. That was so exciting to hear about. And I'm going to ask folks both online in the room to hold your questions till the end. We'll hear from Sarah next, and then we'll come back together and we can hear more about Wijdan's project and have questions as a whole. So thank you so much, Wijdan. And Sarah, we should be ready for you to hop on.
Great. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Thank you to Hope and Rachel for this invitation. I'm talking about a sustainability-informed Artists of the Self literary studies project. Next, please.
Oh, sorry. I'm just checking the chat as well. Sorry about that.
Oh, there's one above.
Okay.
One back.
Oh, sorry. Hold on. Let me jump back to it. Right here?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Sarah. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Of course.
So this is a project that I did with my partner, Dr. Andrea Roxana Balot from the Universitat Rovira i Virgili, Catalonia, Spain. So, and how much we appreciated this opportunity to open our students to the wider world. This is where Hope Wendell and I live, in the Esopus Munsee territory of the Hudson Valley, New York, US. So please come visit us. Next. Our project was a collaboration between a Spanish textual analysis class in English and my Women in Literature general education course at New Paltz. We looked at stories by women from the Caribbean and from the US that portray artists of the self, or characters who resist social norms and values to forge new identities as acts of survival. Whoop, I'm still on the one before that, Rachel.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
It's okay. Classic.
Yeah, my clicker isn't working. That would normally allow me to go back. And then when I'm trying to go back, okay, that worked. There you go. Sorry, Sarah.
Yeah, okay. This is COIL relevant. Okay. Tech challenges. We looked at stories of characters who are artists of the self, who resist social norms and values to forge new identities as acts of survival. So classic COIL projects work well when they're about problem solving. And often one class makes a plan or a prototype to solve a problem or scenario that the other class presents to them. COILing in literature can be a little bit tricky because we tend to stay more abstract and conceptual in that realm rather than the practical applied or project-driven realm. In this instance, our international groups looked at plot points and themes in 3 short fictions written by women and compared Spanish Catalan and East Coast US perceptions of shared social challenges. Depending on the chosen text, these included women's mental health, gender nonconformity, LGBTQ rights and protections, teen suicide and depression, and sex work and trafficking. We examined these topics in terms of environmental, social, and economic sustainability approaches to hinge the fictional stories to real-world issues using the United Nations SDGs, good health and well-being, reduced inequalities, and gender equality. These lenses made the content even more relevant to our students. Next slide. Andrea and I constructed our learning outcomes together to emphasize collaboration, intercultural competency, which increases empathy, and digital professionalism. Students would reflect on their own capacities to be change agents and resist or fight oppression like the protagonists in their stories. Learning outcomes are a place to communicate the values of working in transnational groups, listening deeply, considering perspectives from the partner colleague's culture, and agreeing to disagree. Next slide. Creating community agreements in your home class. Whoops, there's another one in between. Oh, is it not there? Oops, it's not there. Okay, I'll just say that creating community agreements in your home class or at the level of two-class collaboration or within individual COIL project teams can be an important next step to build understanding and chart a path for success. So there are a couple of slides missing that I put in. Okay, don't underestimate the importance of these. No, it's okay, you can stay above. Thank you. Don't underestimate the importance of these initial encounters and the time necessary for students to develop trust and feel comfortable with their new international partners. Most COIL projects devote an entire week to informal getting to know you activities. Of course, the comfort level with meeting new people and styles of interaction may vary drastically across cultures. You will need to have proactive conversations about cultural difference and managing expectations. Icebreaker prompts are a great way to start low-stakes conversation and develop familiarity. So now we're here with Leanne Bell. Before reading stories and interacting with their new partners, students reflected on their own experience with the topics, so they would be able to contextualize the new information in the context of what they already knew, and then construct new knowledge. This follows John Dewey's directives, as well as the more contemporary universal design for learning, Wiggins and McTeague. We used Leanne Bell's storytelling framework to invite students to distinguish between the standard stock story that was being told, concealed stories, such as feminist or queer subtexts, resistance stories when the protagonist pushed back against the status quo, and stories of emergence or transformation by which the main characters developed. We hoped through these models, students would recognize their own potential for growth and increased agency. Next slide. To organize the assignment, we used Padlet, an excellent tool. Along with an initial all-class Zoom introduction, we described our respective campuses and invited the students to introduce themselves according to icebreaker prompts. Students tend to be very curious about each other and cautious. We provided a project overview and tips for virtual exchange that highlighted predictable challenges such as miscommunication and the 6-hour time difference. Although most exchanges went on in English, I made sure that the US students had something to say in Spanish or in other groups in Xhosa in their video self-introductions. We used the Padlet, one for each cohort of 6 to 8 students, for periodic reflection and self-assessment. We also met each group once synchronously for a progress report, but all other collaborative work on the projects took place independently outside of scheduled class time. Next slide. So let's take a look at some of these projects based on stories by women authors Willa Cather, Dionne Brand, and Charlotte Perkins Gilman. Here's an example from Cather's Paul's case with a photo of the gender-bending author in the corner. Students engaged the good health and well-being global goal to articulate the male mental health crisis gap. They argue that Paul's story emphasizes the need to destigmatize men's mental health challenges and resist the feminization of mental illness when associated with hysteria. In their narrated PowerPoint project, they held that stories of men struggling emotionally need to be shared for them to be accepted in both Spain and the US, although the standards were different as far as stigma. Next slide. In Dionne Brand's story, Maya, the daughter of a labor activist, moves from Curaçao in the Southern Caribbean to Amsterdam to be a geriatric nurse, but she ends up doing sex work instead. Our students compared perceptions of sex work in Spain and in the US. They interviewed a former member of this profession and thought about the challenges Maya faces as a social outsider, an identity marker relevant to all 3 of the stories we read. Next slide, please. In a final example, some groups read The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman, a story that deals with women's mental health treatment and the protagonist Jane's resistance to patriarchal control in the person of her doctor husband. Students examined the main character's deteriorating mental health when incarcerated in an attic room dealing with postpartum depression after childbirth and psychosis. Students noticed many interesting comparisons between Spanish and US views on women's mental health and the value of self-expression through writing. They emphasized that this story was written explicitly to change conventional practices of treating women with the restrictive rest cure rather than positive social engagement and fulfilling work. Next slide. Here I want to point out that there are many, you can go to the next slide, please. Thanks. Nope, yeah, that one. There are many other sustainability frameworks in addition to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals that people can use as they think about ways to make course material in any discipline meaningful to students. We use a host of approaches you can see here that tend to resonate with our students and make coursework relevant to their lives and interests. Next slide. I'd also like to, in closing, spotlight some of our superstars with whom I've worked, who've talked and written about their sustainability-informed COIL projects, including Nosipo Faith Makake from Durban University of Technology in South Africa. She wrote about her students' use of poetry to express eco-anxiety related to climate change and the massive flooding that they experienced in Durban during the COIL project I did with her colleague, Benita Bobo. Nicole Simon at Nassau Community College on Long Island, New York, US, has written about incorporating COIL and the UN SDGs in a project on waterway restoration and conservation with the Federal University of Pernambuco, Brazil, and others. This is also a shameless plug for our forthcoming book that features both of their work. And now I think Rachel will share some student comments. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you so much, Sarah, and sorry about the tech difficulties. Thanks for bearing with us. Yeah, so we have a few quotations here that we just wanted to share before we get into the Q&A. These are drawn from student data that both Wijdan and Sarah collected. And we wanted to focus in the end on the ways that students describe their COIL experience with regard to intercultural competency. So we have a quotation here. One student said, "Communication between us was via chat. As an introvert, I loved it and behaved more like myself. It would be difficult for me to communicate with people, even if they were from the same culture as me. In addition to the fact that I am not fluent in the English language, I took the time to understand and communicate with others." Here we have one on stereotypes and global self-reflection, which I think is especially relevant to students in the US context. So we have somebody saying the cross-cultural aspect was nothing but positive for the American contingent, as the Spanish partners all took their schoolwork and responsibilities very seriously. I'm not entirely sure if the opposite would be true. I was embarrassed at times and was generally self-conscious of the fact that some of our group members were reinforcing stereotypes about Americans pretty strongly. So you get that kind of global self-reflection, at least for some students in the US context. And here we have a student on values and skills saying, "I can say that after this, I'm a little bit more confident about my language skills. Also, I think that I'm less shy than at the beginning of the project." So I think that we see benefits coming from a range of different participants here. And what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to check the chat. Okay. And people in the chat are saying that they can't see the slides. Yeah, that might be your view settings. But I don't know, Katie, could you message that person independently? Yeah. It looks like the name is Nella Navarro Lapointe. And please forgive my mispronunciation, surely, of your name. but we'll have Katie, who's in the room here doing tech support, take a look. Okay. So I do want to invite people. What I'm going to do is stop sharing our screen, and I'm going to put gallery view on in the room so that here in the room, we will be seeing everyone who's joining us online. And I would invite you, if you're online and want to participate in the conversation, you're welcome to do that in a few ways. You can use the hand raising function and I'll call on you. You can put a question in the chat. You can simply unmute yourself and try to jump in. That's also welcome. There's, just a few of us here in the room, so we're really trying to make the hybrid format work for everyone. So I have a few questions prepared for Sarah and Wijdan, but I want to make sure that we have time for other people's questions first. So I wanted to start with any questions people might have about their projects or about just the process of planning a COIL initiative. Any thoughts or questions people want to start with? Go ahead, Michelle.
I'd be curious if anyone is willing to share like their template for a community agreement. That really struck me as something that would be really important to have. And I would love to see anybody's template if they're willing to share and have permission from their other instructors as well.
Are people able to hear Michelle?
Yes, I can hear. I can't share for some reason here. Rachel, you might be able to share. If you look at a more recent version of our slides, there's some community agreements. It's pretty informal, but I'd be happy to share all sorts of examples.
Yeah, are you saying, Sarah, that you can't share your screen?
No, I'm not able to.
Okay.
But I'd love to speak to that just for a second. I do that with all my classes, even seated in-person classes. And a nice way to set it up is to talk about operational community agreements and relational community agreements. This comes from Marissa Marquette at Cornell. And to say, how are we going to operate in our classroom? It can be online or not online. What are going to be our sort of agreements about engagement? Are we going to come on time? Are we going to bring the reading? Are we going to raise our hands or not raise our hands? And then what are our relational community agreements? How are we going to be in relationship with each other? Are we going to respect differences? Are we going to assume best intentions? Is it going to be okay to show up feeling sad one day? Students tend to love to do this kind of self-reflection and laying out the groundwork for how we're going to be together. So I very much recommend that in the COIL context, because it helps the students reflect on the fact that they're the ones making the decisions. The learning, it belongs to them. This is their game. And the more they talk about how they want it to go, the more empowered they will be as learners and more in charge of their own education. So it also is a little bit of letting go of your authority as the educator, which is also, I would highly recommend, because the students rise to the challenge. And then if they made the rules, they need to hold themselves accountable. And I would get right into, what if someone says something that's really not okay? That's actually pretty offensive. What are you going to do? And so they practice proactively what they're going to say, like, ouch, that hurt, or I'm not sure that that was the most effective way of saying that. So you actually role play what you're going to do in a difficult situation. And in COIL, with much more dramatic intercultural relations than in our own home classrooms, that's especially essential. Someone else might like to comment on that from their own experience.
Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. And I can also, Michelle is our Office of Global Education Director here. So I can also put the two of you in touch if you want to share materials directly.
And a New Paltz alum. Woo woo.
Nice. And Sarah, you should be able to share. The settings are all set up for all participants to share. So I'm not sure what challenge you might be facing. We can add it to the list. We do have another question in the chat. We have a question that says, how did you find your COIL partner?
I can answer that. So I actually had my PhD in the United States from Iowa State University. After I graduated and moved back to Saudi Arabia, one of my colleagues reached out to me because we have met in Iowa and asked me if I want to be part of that. And she connected me with Cosette, who's leading this COIL project. My other COIL project I was part of, we heard about a fund that supports exchange, cultural exchange and education, and we wanted to apply for this fund, but we had a condition, it has to be through like British University. So we reached out to Watt University in Scotland, and we told them if we can like jointly apply for this fund. And it took us a year to finish all the paperwork and make sure regulation, because it was funded, it was more complicated, it's needed a lot of approval, but we did actually secure $70,000 fund for that for other COIL projects. And it was nice to have students after they've been exchanged virtually to meet each other and travel. We use this fund to travel and to get materials and hold an exhibition in the end of the design course they had together.
That's awesome. That's so exciting. And it shows that, you know, there are different funding opportunities and travel opportunities that many people find by getting started with this. So kind of once you get started, you'll find institutional support and connections. Sarah, did you want to share how you met your partner? I know you've had many, so.
Actually, Hope Wendell recommended some people, and then the more you're in the community, the more you hear about things. Christina Lee, who I think is there with you in person today, she told me about her project with Unibe, and people are very generous about sharing their templates. She talked about a conversation she had with Unibe about diversity, equity, and inclusion at the height of COVID. And so I modeled a shorter project on one with her partner, Ali. And then I met Benita Bobo, I think also through a connection with Hope. So it's just good to reach out and ask people, say, here's the project I'm working on, and then to go to the partnering fair and learn a lot about what people are doing. So.
Well, thank you so much. Okay, we have a question in the chat. How do you enroll in the COIL program and what are the first steps? I would say it depends on your institution. So if you can identify whether or not your institution already has a connection with SUNY COIL, it's not just within the SUNY system that people do, it's folks all over the world. So I would first kind of do that research on your campus, find out if anyone is already connected. Sometimes it might just be a faculty member, sometimes it might be an office. If not, I would reach out to the SUNY COIL Center and start to ask those questions about how you can join the partnering bulletin. If you just Google SUNY COIL Center and, you know, check out their website, those emails will go to Hope Wendell, who Sarah has just been talking about and who's in the next room with us. She's a phenomenal director of SUNY COIL. She really is a people person, a connector, and she'll get you that information you need.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, that's, if I can speak, is that okay?
Please. Absolutely.
I'm Kim Langenmeyer. I'm the Director of International Education at Malloy University, and this is our first introduction to COIL. It's not yet established on our campus, so we're charged with that. That's why we're hoping to make connections here today and seeing what our next steps are so that we can become a part of the COIL community.
Yes, we would love to have you. And again, Hope is your resource for that. We have Anthony in the chat who's also worked with Sarah, and he'll be in a presentation later today agreeing that Hope is wonderful. So yeah, just that first touch point with SUNY COIL Center is going to get you in conversation with Hope, and the resources that they have to offer are really phenomenal.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. All right. I'm going to ask one of my questions, but I would like everyone to continue putting theirs in the chat. Wijdan, at the end of her talk, you were talking about how it can be a lot of work and it's quite challenging, but you concluded that by saying it's worth it. So I wanted to know a little bit more from both of you. What's in it for you? Why do you do COIL? Why do you value this work? Which, as you know, we've talked about, there's a lot of considerations in place to make it successful.
Yeah, this is a great question. As an educator, I really found it rewarding to watch my student grow. I value, I myself was able to travel to the US and like be in a cross-cultural or different culture and learn. And I do value this, and I wanted all my students to try it. And I know not everyone is able to travel. So providing this to my student was really like important thing for me, and I do know how much it's helped them in their growth and in their education. So watching my student grow was a very rewarding for me as an educator. And as a professor, like doing conducting research is like a required every year from any university professor, of course. So this is a great research opportunity in pedagogical, and it's have helped me as an educator grow and learn so many skills in different pedagogical approach, teaching method, assessment, curriculum development. And we did actually did have our first paper, and it will be published like in a ISI paper very soon. And all of those like career saying myself like helped me in my career grow and in my educational method to my students. So that's why it was very rewarding for me. And I'm sure Sarah also, or other instructor who have tried it, experience similar grow in their career and in their student.
Yeah, that's so great, Wijdan. And yeah, we'll jump over to Sarah, and I'll just echo, I think that sometimes there can be a perception that like COIL is something separate that you do, or, you know, it might not play into those metrics that are valued in the academy. So I really like how you're emphasizing it does connect to research. It does connect to some of the things that people need to be doing for tenure and promotion. It can connect with conferencing and publication and all of that. So thank you. Sarah.
Oh, this is a huge question. We could do this for the rest of the week. I love COIL because of all the unexpected learning experiences that happen that I can't even preview. We're a public university, and almost all of our students are from the state of New York. A lot of them have never left the state of New York. I had one student tell me she'd never spoken with anyone outside of the country before, and just that was a thrill for her. I think we need to know each other better in this world. And the dynamic I really appreciate is the one of self-reflection, when the students start looking at the way they do business or the way they walk through the world and start thinking about their own story, because you really need to know your own story before you go out exploring other people's stories. And so that's one of the most enriching things for me. Yeah. I think it helps world peace, frankly, right? I mean, I really can't think of something that I value more than having my students understand that there are other ways of consuming products, learning, being in relationship, traveling through their town. You know, I just think it's really enriching. That's what literature can do too, is also help you think from another perspective. But this is live action life, and it's very fulfilling in that way. And I like to collaborate with other people.
That's wonderful. Yes, thank you so much. And that makes me think of the other question that we talked about when we were planning this session. Both Sarah and Wijdan really wanted to emphasize, as they did in their talks, the intercultural competency piece. And some of those quotations from students at the end were highlighting that as well. So maybe we can end by just hearing a little bit more about that. Did you see students gain intercultural competency through the experience? How did students surprise you? Did they surprise themselves?
Wijdan, do you want to go first?
Whatever you want, you can go first. Your project focus on it more, so I think you have more, but if you want me to go first.
We have just 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, this will just conclude.
Okay. Then I won't tell long anecdotes, but there were a few real challenges that had to do with cross-cultural competency. One was that Durban in South Africa experienced the worst environmental disaster they'd ever had, with massive flooding, and 400 people died, and the internet went out. So in the middle of our project, we had partner students who were dealing with a state of emergency, and with no internet, and with all sorts of trauma going on. And so with my US students, we had to talk about, how do you talk to someone who is in real danger, or who might have lost a family member, or who is dealing with these kind of challenges? And so we had to sort of role play what you would say. You wouldn't try to identify with their pain, you would acknowledge what was happening. And that was really unexpected, of course, and very important for them. In our Dominican Republic UNIBE conversation, we had a very interesting angle in which they were talking about the relationship between Haitians and Dominicans. And right there in our Zoom all group meeting, we had one guy say, "Hey, I'm Haitian," at the same time that certain people were talking about immigrants coming into the country from Haiti and having too many children. And another woman was Asian and said, "Hey, people keep yelling at me because of COVID." And I could just see my students' eyes getting big as US students who sometimes think we have a corner on racial tension and problems with our Black Lives Movement protests that were going on all summer long. And they were able to see other cultures and how they talk about racial difference and what that means, the implications. There were also other digital professional challenges about, should you be broadcasting from your bathroom with your stockpiled toilet paper in the back? What do you do when certain students complain about other students' presentation, like they're not taking it seriously because they look like they're in a towel, but they're in the bathroom because their sister's baby is crying in the other room? And how do you negotiate those kind of real conversations about expectations about etiquette and about self-presentation? But Wijdan, I want you to have a chance to.
Thank you, Sarah. Well, with our project, because it was mainly about fashion and about like how dress choices in two different cultures, we did like have like a tip for successful exchange, preparing students to this exchange, telling them about all like cultural differences and how they should be like respectful to all. But we do, however, have some incident happen regarding what is okay to share in public and what it's not okay. For instance, like we are in all female campus, so and not all female students are comfortable having their camera on or like sharing even their picture with their other male team member or even female, because this is their private, or this is culturally not okay. And another incident about like cross-dress or freedom on dress. This is not a topic, or identity or gender identity. It's not a public topic that Saudi university or Saudi students are comfortable sharing in educational setting. It's considered as a very, very private matter, and it is a disrespectful thing to share. So we do, as instructor, have a lot of like cultural sensitivity navigation as we prepare our curriculum, having a tip for all students to be aware of these differences. And of course, we do meet regularly as an instructor to make sure we brought this to the table for a discussion and make sure we are solving it in a professional manner.
Wonderful. Thank you so much to both of you. And we have a question in the chat about recommending how many synchronous sessions do you recommend? I'm going to ask if Wijdan and Sarah could answer that in the chat because I don't want to keep people over. So if you do have recs for how often to meet synchronously, if at all, please put them in the chat for Ivana. Otherwise, I'd like us to give Wijdan and Sarah a hand. This was so wonderful. And yeah, just thank you for your energy, your projects, your values. And if people try to contact you if they have questions or are curious about your materials? Okay, both of their contact information is online, so please feel free to be in touch and build those connections. And thank you so much to everyone in the room and online for being here with us.